All right. All right, we're recording. Thank you, everybody, for joining this this meeting of the Tampa B2B Marketer Pardot Community Group. This is the second installation in a kind of multi kind of a series of meetings that are looking at Pardot career paths in different industries and different verticals. The first one was looking at people who are internal Pardot resources in B2B and B2C organizations. And this one, as you see on the first slide here, this one we're looking at Pardot career paths within higher education institutions and companies that sell or that operate within the education vertical, whether it's K through 12 or higher education, things of that nature. So we've got some great panelists and some who come from various areas of that industry and vertical, who will, I'm sure, have a lot of interesting insights to share. So with that, this is a look at who we have here. We are missing Chi. She may not have been able to make it at the last minute, but at any rate, if you guys, I'll kind of start with some introductions. So I'll just go left to right. So Michelle, if you'd like to introduce yourself a bit.
Sure. So I'm Michelle Littlefield. I am a solution architect at Traction on Demand. I focus primarily on education cloud in terms of architecture, but often am dabbling in marketing automation. Pretty much every project that I work on has MA involved. Prior to joining Traction, I've been here for about 2 years. Prior to joining Traction, I was assistant dean for finance and strategy at the University of New England, where I had kind of worked my way up the ranks in a marketing capacity. Actually, I started as a marketing manager and then became a marketing director, and then finally assistant dean. So I was there for about 8 years building the infrastructure around the College of Graduate and Professional Studies, which included Pardot, Salesforce, and many other things, many other hats that I wore. So super excited to be here.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, Mary. We may have lost Mary. All right, until we get Mary back. Ashley, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, hello. My name is Ashley Sudero. I'm currently a consultant at New Age Experts, focusing on Pardot. And previously, I was at the University of Denver doing marketing and heavy Pardot user there.
Excellent. Thank you. Andrew.
Hi, I'm Andrew. I'm currently the marketing automation manager for Teachers Pay Teachers. I oversee a lot of the mid-funnel process, but my work also extends to using different tools all throughout the sales pipeline. Previously, I started out as a consultant, just working with lots of different types of industries and using all different types of marketing automation tools.
Excellent. And Jessica.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica Hopkins. I'm a senior solution engineer actually with Salesforce, working on salesforce.org. So I work with our nonprofit and education customers. So I'm a little bit different role than the others on the team that we have here today. So I work more on the pre-sales side, but excited to be here and hopefully be able to help you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've got kind of a diverse group of people here who've come from different places and have different life experiences that I think will allow for some interesting things to come out of it. That's kind of what happened last time. We have these kind of ideas, these questions that we're like we'd like to kind of start off with, and then progressively, and then things come up, and we kind of run down these different paths. So with that, I just want to let everyone know that obviously this is being recorded, and it will be available afterwards. I'm going to be sending it out by email, and then it'll also be posted. I'm going to post a link to it on the Pardot Geeks blog in a couple days later. And it looks like we did have Brandy able to join. I'm not sure if she is just kind of I don't want to put her on the spot, so we can kind of move forward. So about this panel, we've got a group of 6 Pardot professionals who currently work as internal Pardot experts in marketing roles or marketing centric roles within higher education institutions and in education organizations. They'll talk a bit about their career paths and provide insights for those interested in a path like that for themselves. They'll talk to the extent that they're able about their current roles, how Pardot is used or how they've used it in the past, and also try to expand a bit on what their specific roles required of them. The idea here is to kind of help people understand how both Pardot and then just the broader marketing automation, lead gen, lead nurture, et cetera, how that happens within specifically higher education or in organizations that market to or very closely aligned to education, whether it's marketing to higher ed or with TPT, more specifically to K-12 and things of that nature. They're not, and I don't want people to hear what they're saying here and say, oh, because Andrew did it this way, that's obviously I'm going to be able to be a marketing automation manager or whatever. This is meant to kind of for you to glean kind of knowledge from and think about, and kind of if you're wanting to chart a path that's kind of let's say you're a Pardot user, you're certified in Pardot, and you're like, education is a passion of yours, then this should hopefully help you understand or get a better grasp of how Pardot is used, or what that path might look like for someone who's wanting to move into the education field. I do want to talk a little bit about the final 2 panels. Dates, solid dates are TBD, but it's looking like I'm trying to do these once a month. So the next one is going to be specifically around Pardot consulting. So not necessarily aligned to an industry or a vertical, but people who work places like where Ashley works now, like at New Age as a Pardot consultant. And so more around what that career path looks like, what a Pardot consultant is and is not, et cetera. And then the last one's going to be focused more on nonprofits. So Jessica may even be back for the nonprofits one. I'll have to see, but it's similar to this education, but it's looking at how Pardot is used in a nonprofit space, the different things, and there's going to be some analogs between education and nonprofit. This was almost going to be a one single meeting, but after kind of looking into it a bit more, I realized that there was enough differences that it warranted its own. There were enough people who I really wanted to hear from, that I felt like it warranted its own session. So with that, we're going to walk into some of these questions. And then I just want to let you guys know that there is a tab called Q&A. If you go up to the chat tab, it says General and Q&A. I want to encourage you guys, if you do have questions as we're talking, to go and enter your Q&As there. You can also enter in the general chat. It might be hard to kind of toggle between the two to keep an eye on them. But questions are always welcome. The panelists may jump into the Q&A and just start answering in the panel, in the chat panel. That's what happened last time. But I'd also like to obviously put these to them in the actual conversation. What I'd like to do is kind of while we're waiting for people to be able to kind of submit questions, I do have a couple that I've worked on that I have some questions that I have. So I will open it up to Jessica. So Jessica, in your role as a solutions engineer, that's a term that may not be terribly familiar to people. So I think first, if you could kind of help explain a little bit at a high level what a solution engineer is, and then secondly, at Salesforce anyways, and then second, the question itself of some of the things that like when you are having these initial conversations with, mostly it's going to be these higher education institutions, what like and they come to you with, here's my use case, here's the problem that I'm trying to solve. If you could at a high level, maybe kind of talk about what some of those initial things are that people are looking to Pardot as a potential tool to help them solve.
Okay. Yeah, so to start off, some of you have heard of the term solution engineer, not quite sure what that is. So basically, the way that Salesforce works is we have a sales team. We have our salesperson, so the person who is kind of working with you throughout the entire process. And then they bring in someone like me as a solution engineer to help you understand what your issues are, kind of help you understand what those kind of those catalyst points are on when you need to start to make a change, how a solution could help you improve your processes. And that's kind of where I come in to help you understand, especially from a marketing side, of how to help with your marketing strategy, what tools would be put in place to help you achieve those goals, and kind of in the end up showing you demonstrations, kind of proof of concepts, and really get you to see the tool for itself. So today we're talking about Pardot, but I do also work with Marketing Cloud as well. So really working with within those two different tools to help you see your marketing strategy come to life and how that can help transform your organization. So then to go to your next question, Ben, of what kind of problems do education customers come to us with? And we kind of classify these as use cases. So I think the main two that I work with specifically with education is helping customers with their recruiting. They're not really understanding who the best students are to reach out to, really working within that system to help them understand who are the most qualified leads. And then the other would also be on the other end of that spectrum of advancement. So helping them understand who their top potential donors are, who they could reach out to, and not just get those one-off $20 gifts and work with those giving days for that, but also help them with major gift donors and really be able to work with that from that perspective.
When they come to you, like, are they saying, hey, I'm on MailChimp, or I'm on this, or I'm on that, and are they trying to level up, saying, okay, we know our data requirements or our needs have exceeded the abilities of a MailChimp? Is that often like a use case, or what typically are they coming to you kind of hat in hand with?
Yeah, so MailChimp is one that we have a lot of customers come with, and I'll say that we work with K through 12 customers all the way up to community colleges and larger universities as well. So it varies from education institution to institution. So some of them are coming with, we've outgrown MailChimp, we're not sure what to do next. They're looking for more of an actual marketing automation tool rather than just an email capability. So that's something that they come to. Others, they're looking for more of that integration with the Salesforce CRM, and they're not really able to do that with some other tools out there. So looking to have that full, Salesforce, we love our 360 degree view of our constituents. So really focusing in on that as well. And then the other one, organizations coming to us and saying, we don't know what to do. How do we get from where we are today to becoming that connected university, that connected campus, that connected school, whatever that situation may be?
Awesome. So there is actually a question in the Q&A, and I want to kind of put this to a mixture of Jessica and Michelle. And this is something I'm sure you guys hear quite a bit, is what do you think is a better fit? And this is from Kathy Epperson. What is a better fit for marketing in higher ed, Pardot or Marketing Cloud? Does it depend on the channels, budget, or complexity of segmentation? So I think I will start with Michelle, and then if Jessica, if you have some caveats that you want to add as well, please do.
So this is one that I get quite a bit, actually. I'm currently working with a client specifically to help them with their marketing automation roadmap because they don't know the answer to this question. And usually, I start with a few things. So I look at the capabilities, or I ask them about the capabilities of their marketing team. What skill sets do they have in-house to be able to leverage the tool? So that's one thing. Looking at, what is it that they're trying to achieve? So their big pain points, if it's around like lead qualification, where something like a scoring and grading model is going to come into play, then, that's obviously, something you get out of the box with Pardot, but not as easy to set up in Marketing Cloud, or would be more custom. Where I tend to see Pardot fall a little bit short is around requirements on segmentation. So if an education client, for example, wants to pull in fields from the application object to tell the applicant what their progress is, harder to do that in Pardot, nearly impossible really to do that in Pardot, but easy to do in Marketing Cloud. So those are kind of the general questions that I ask. In terms of what's better, it depends on those answers and on the client's needs, really the institution's needs. I would say in an ideal situation, if budget isn't a concern, like the most ideal would be to have both, and you could leverage the strengths of both together. So if I'm working with a client who happens to magically have that kind of unending budget, that would be great. Rarely that happens. And so usually, it starts with those questions, identifying if Pardot is going to fill most of the gaps and check most of those boxes. If not, then generally it pivots to a conversation about Marketing Cloud.
Awesome. Yeah, and that's actually a great point. I've myself have seen that happen where I had a client. It was a large, was a public university down here in Florida, and they started with Pardot. They're like, okay, we have a very specific subset of our audience that is they're trying to target their transfer students, and treat them as kind of a just more standard kind of lead nurture. And that's a pretty good use case, because you've got people who could go anywhere. They could transfer anywhere, and you want to nurture them, hit them with emails, get them, have this university be top of mind, to get them through to the conversion, which is get them to complete the transfer process. And that it was a very good use case, and we built the solution to do that. And then they're thinking, well, because they start hitting the ceiling of Pardot of, well, I want to be able to do like SMS, and I want to be able to do these more complex segmentations. Like with Marketing Cloud, you can leverage so many different data endpoints that think of Pardot as kind of a walled garden. It's either in Salesforce or it's in Pardot. Everything has to either get into one or the other, versus leveraging things from like other places, like a third-party application tracking system. You'd have to pull. It's the level of effort to get that data into Pardot is so high that it's like you start to question whether Pardot is right for what you're trying to do. And if you're a public university or a large education organization, Marketing Cloud would actually make a lot more sense. The downside of that is that the technical requirements and the acumen required to be able to manage that tool effectively is kind of orders of magnitude higher than Pardot. Pardot can be taught fairly quickly, relatively low level of technical skill required. Marketing Cloud, that really becomes a headcount, at least one headcount, just for Marketing Cloud. And that becomes hard in more kind of lean education organizations. That's when they start outsourcing to people like Michelle, and things like that, which kind of is a nice segue to the question that I had kind of put together ahead of time for Michelle of what are some of the scenarios where a higher education institution or education organization comes to you and says, we're too, what are the situations where they need your help? What are the common scenarios where they say, listen, I recognize that I've kind of hit the ceiling of my team skills, of my number of hours in a day. What are some of the more common things that these institutions will come to you needing help with?
Yeah, I think it varies broadly, but I would say the main theme is higher and specific to higher ed, less with K-12, but in higher ed in particular. Teams, admissions teams, advancement teams, marketing teams are bogged down by these legacy platforms that don't really do what they need them to do effectively. So you have these big machines that are SIS systems. They're intended to be, for transcripting and a system of record, for your educational institution. And, they're trying to use certain systems for CRM capabilities or marketing automation, and it just is not working. It's siloed. Things don't communicate well with each other. Data gets lost, things sit and they don't really even know how to how to utilize, their own data. So more often than not, it's clients coming off of legacy platforms and leveraging Salesforce in terms of CRM capabilities. But specifically for recruiting and admissions, my best practice recommendation is like, you should always be considering marketing automation first. Like from a career perspective, for me, that was how I got where I am, is because I was a marketer who knew Pardot really well. I set it up, I created the data model, I knew my data, I knew how it was used, I knew how to calculate my ROI, and that just facilitated my career movement forward to becoming an architect of the CRM platform, and then in charge of budgets and in charge of a lot of different things, all because I had that understanding. And so generally, I would say number one theme, as of late is higher ed clients, seeking out consultants who know their systems are broken, and they want best practice recommendations on how to leverage Salesforce as a cohesive platform. And I think it's tricky because with education, we now have the EDA architecture, the education data architecture, which is fantastic, but until just recently, like literally within the last couple of months, there was not a lot of guidance on leads and opportunities, generally not a whole lot of guidance in the documentation on how to really structure EDA with Pardot in particular. And so that's an area that, just because of the background I came from using Pardot since 2012, I kind of figured that out at UNE when I was there, and I knew how to solution, these pieces. And so they're looking to consultants to, identify like, what are the best practices? Like, what are the things I shouldn't forget in terms of my configuration? What are things that are not, obvious in the EDA architecture, that we need to be aware of from a best practice standpoint? And I'd say the number one pain point is like, they don't know how to assess. They don't know how to assess ROI. They don't know generally how to identify what is impacting conversions. And sometimes even they're not even actually managing conversions because they don't have a tool like the opportunity record to help them manage the sales process. So I think that's the thing that a consulting firm can bring to the table in terms of getting you up and running on the platform to really, get that 360-degree view of the constituent right from the very first touch. And then we see them build on it for more use cases around like retention, advancement, and things like that. So I would say that's probably the number one thing that I'm seeing, and the number one thing that I help clients with in my daily life.
That's great. So we have a Q&A. Another one from Kathy. Are there other apps that can extend the functionality of Pardot for higher ed to get closer to Marketing Cloud? For example, does Mogly work for Pardot to send SMS? There's SMS tools out there that you will never, I say that to say this, that you will never get a native experience on an for at least right now. I don't want to speak futurely. Maybe Pardot has some amazing plans, but you will get, it will be kind of a duct tape, kind of half functional. It'll work, but it's not going to be like Engagement Studio, send SMS. Like, it's not going to be that experience. It's going to be managing two different systems to talk to each other to fire off an SMS. It's not going to be like GoToWebinar where you say, like, where you can actually see the native things. So there are things get a little bit closer, but there's certain functionality within Marketing Cloud that Pardot just doesn't do, and probably doesn't even want to do, because they want to keep that kind of, we are for B2B and kind of lead gen, lead nurture, kind of closer to one-to-one, Marketing Cloud, one-to-many, multi-channel. They're meant for different audiences. So that's typically how I explain that when I get asked something like what Kathy asked, like, how do you find some functionality to like strap on the back of Pardot to make it Marketing Cloud-esque? And after I figure out why they want to do that, it's like, well, there's some tools that will work, but it's not going to be a native experience. It'll be added cost for this third-party app, and then integration, and then maintenance of the integration, and tactical debt potentially down the road. It's a whole thing. So it's out there, but I would do your research before you commit to any dollars and any effort. So I do want to pivot. We do have a panelist who was able to join us, Brandy. she asked to, she has a quick slide that she wants to share about herself and a little bit of an intro. So I will stop sharing. And Brandy, if you can see the little share, can you see the little share icon at the bottom? Right now you're on mute, by the way. There should be a little unmute icon.
Hi everyone. Thank you for having me, and I see a lot of familiar faces, and thank you again for having me. So a little bit about me. So I was an international student, came from Vietnam 8 years ago. So my past job working with San Jose State University, which just gave me a lot of experience because I plugged myself as an international student. So and I'm working for MMA as a national senior marketing operation analyst, but my life still Pardot, Salesforce, marketing cloud. So I just want to share very quick, just one slide. Let me send my screen that what I learned and how I become a marketing operation analyst, live and breathe in cloud Salesforce from an international student. So let me share my screen very quick. Okay, so, all right. Sorry, what's happening? Right here, can you see my screen?
Nope, not yet.
Okay.
Oh, there we go.
Coming.
Whoa.
What screen can you see on your end?
Pardot career paths, higher education, front end, back end mindset.
Yes. Slide I wanted to share what if there's some audience listening or any experts. So it's still loading imagination. So I think my point is we just mentioned about the data architect. So that is like the end goal, right? We're understanding how all the data structure work. No matter what you want, education or you work for corporate, whatever, understand the data structure is important. But my point today is go back, how can we? My point is, it's very important to understand the front end and the back end, have a both front end and back end mindset. So as a student journey, so the beginning of the journey, student explore, discovery, they Google search, and then they go social media, whatever, to find and select which school they're gonna go, they're gonna apply, enroll, or even like a summer class or winter. So it's shopping around. So how can we interpret as a front end from the student journey to the data journey? You can be a data solution or architect or marketer, or even Salesforce admin or Pardot admin. But I think it's very important understanding from the front end to the back end. So any journey have the beginning and the middle and the end, right? So for example, like I'm a student from Vietnam, I'm Google, search to find a university. It can be a public or private. So in the system and the back end, we need to capture how to get the data entry. Even from the lead generation form, Pardot form, or Web2 list form, the third party or from Salesforce form, for example. And then in middle of the journey, the student onboarding. So as I would say a back end person can be any role. We need to understanding how the segmentation, and I agree with the panelists. We're talking about how the segmentation, and agree with Michelle about how to qualify the lead and then nurture them. And then so Salesforce, both Pardot and Marketing Cloud have amazing tool automation. But the question is that how can we utilize automation, to minimize all the manual work? For example, even like from the lead conversion, right? We have a lot of tool on Salesforce side, but I feel like that's a lot of area we can improve. The end of journey, right? So I graduate, let's say, master degree in 2 years, and exist from the journey. The question in the system, like for at the end of the data journey, do we want to retain the data, or we archive, because it will depends on the how engaged the data of the student with the system. So it looked like very simple, but I've seen like a lot of layer. It's not only, the marketing person, or, or can be a recruiter, can be development team or whatever. But the point is, I want to bring it out is it's very important to plug in your mindset, the front end, the back end, and then try to utilize all the automation and all the tool out there. I'm happy to share more, what's the difference between Pardot and so forth. But at the end of the day, I think it's very important understanding the student journey or client or customer journey and how we translate into the data journey.
That's a great point. I think you touch on the idea that you need to kind of that in education specifically, you're you kind of have to recognize that you're doing more than just Pardot. Like there's a lot there.
Yeah.
And so that's actually a question that I would like to put to, let's ask Ashley. So during your time when you were at University of Denver and you were working on you were managing Pardot, but I have to think that it wasn't just Pardot that you were doing. There was your responsibilities expanded beyond that. So I would love to kind of hear what the role, like within the larger scope of of your position and at that time, responsibilities to more than just Pardot, and then also what Brandy said, like you're kind of thinking about like the full funnel, and the full funnel is more than just Pardot. It might be social, the SEO, it might be content. So I'd be interested to hear kind of, as someone in an education role, working in a marketing role in higher education, all the different kind of tools that you ultimately have domain over.
Yeah, that's a great question. So at the University of Denver, my position in my department, it was in the business school, was marketing manager. And that really did mean like wearing a lot of different hats. I would say that's very common in education, is to be, you have your thing you're good at, your skill, but then just naturally you're pulled in a lot of different directions. And I would say that's just kind of like everything in life. Strengths can be people's weaknesses. It's a pro and a con, in a higher education setting. There's a lot of room for creativity and learning and trying things in new ways, but there's also just kind of this wide open landscape. So yeah, not only was Pardot my responsibility, so jumping in and doing email marketing and using it as best as I could kind of figure out on my own. But then, yeah, social, designing the header images. So in Adobe all the time, jumping in and working with the clients because I was familiar with what we did. So the clients in our case were like adult students who would come back to the business school and do like leadership programs. So jumping in and being around, the actual programs, which honestly was great. If you can kind of keep in touch with who your customer is, if you're in a marketing role, I mean, that's all the better, I think, to know what your goals are. And then I'd say, yeah, just, the other thing, I felt like there was a lot of individual responsibility in terms of staying up with the marketing trends, because it's not exactly like education institutions are like the trendiest, techiest, just following all, what's going on. Like it's kind of your personal responsibility to understand what's going on. I mean, also universities have no shortage of content. So luckily content marketing was on the rise. I mean, the product is education. So that's awesome. We always had things to be sending out. I never felt like I was bothering people because literally everything I sent out through Pardot, I felt like was valuable information, and that, kind of like giving it to them. Right. So,
yeah.
But yeah, it was great. A lot of different roles for sure. And not even necessarily everything tied into Pardot. I mean, like it was mentioned, you have a lot of legacy systems. So you're using the student database system to pull data from. You have your LMS systems, that you're communicating with current students through. You have just a plethora of technologies and products to consider and think about. We did almost no data syncing and all data imports just because the systems weren't working together in the way that we wanted, So But yeah, it was great learning experience. And now that I'm a Pardot consultant, there are so many things I wish that I knew back, like page actions. Why was I not using page actions?
Yeah.
Just flat out at all, like this little hidden gem, but you live and learn. So
yeah, that's kind of like for anybody who's thinking about going into like saying, oh, I want to be like I would love to work at the University of X, like whatever it is, and I'm learning Pardot. I love Pardot, but people have to kind of also consider that unlike maybe in a like traditional B2B or B2C where you're in marketing, like marketing automation manager doesn't typically exist within a university because that's a very narrow job. And so what you were talking about, marketing manager, Pardot is just kind of a part of that role. It's like if you were to be in a university, you're not necessarily like thinking that, oh, I'm just going to run Pardot is not reality. Like you're going to be the content marketer. You're going to be maybe the SEO, SEM person, might be the social media person too, plus managing all your vendor relationships for anybody that you have partners with. So university, like in an education institution, I think it's important to like remember that it's unique in that you would be managing Pardot, but that's just one thing you'll be doing. You'll be responsible for maybe 4 or 5 other marketing platforms or marketing avenues or whatever. So with that, I do want to we didn't get a chance to do an intro with Mary. So I would love to hear from Mary and like talk a bit about her, who she is, what she does, and then also within that's kind of a follow-up question is in your role at the College of Business at the University of Florida, just if you could expand a bit upon like the role of Pardot and email marketing in the broader digital strategy for recruitment and enrollment at the College of Business, and where that fits, and if it's if there's is it the main tool, or where does it fit within the larger picture?
Hi. So first of all, let me introduce myself. I'm Mary, and I apologize when I wasn't here before. My computer decided it was going to install some hardware right as the meeting started. So I got back on. I'm here. Yes, I work at the College of Business at the University of Florida. I've been there 20 years and worn, much like Ashley, I've worn many, many hats, from webmaster to starting the email marketing there, running multiple different constant contacts, MailChimp, all these different tools, Zoom, Eventbrite, WebEx, all the different things that are going on, all the different times, all the different technologies, WordPress, ASP, HTML, I do all of it. So that has led me to become the Pardot expert, I guess, at the college. Starting in about 2016, we had 2 different businesses, or business units, I should say, 2 different Pardot accounts that we were running that were not connected, that were doing totally different things. I came in and cleaned house, basically. I looked at all the data that was there, untangled some of the spaghetti that was there, and realized that no one had even been using campaigns, no automations, nothing. So I went and I built everything. And then shortly thereafter, we looked at Marketing Cloud to do some of the recruiting and enrollment marketing. And we decided, after evaluating it, that we would stay with Pardot. We've moved Pardot Lightning, and we now have 2 business units. We have moved those 2 program sets. One is 9 MBA programs and 7 specialized masters. Very, very different and unique programs, marketing to very different and unique types of people and students. So we have moved those into Pardot Lightning, into one business unit, sharing automation, sharing data, sharing everything. We have all of the segmentations built out. It's tied into Salesforce, connected campaigns. So all of that is running very smoothly, and we've been able to really clean up that data and get it flowing back and forth nicely. There are still some holes, as you have all mentioned, but we are still working on that. So basically, that is our main marketing tool that we're using for recruiting and enrollment. So we have, all these different people. We're trying to find people who are interested and guide them, but we also want our qualified candidates because we have, certain criteria that we're looking for these programs. So Pardot is our lead gen. It is our, we have an agency that we work with, and we do some of these other third-party kind of applications to get them into the funnel. we qualify them, and then we move them down the funnel with nurturing campaigns and engagements, and hopefully get them to enrollment. So we are looking at that full life cycle from lead gen, lead nurturing, getting them down into the end and enrolled. And once they're enrolled, we pretty much stop right there, and we aren't using them for alumni or anything else like that right now. Maybe down the road, but that's where we are with it.
Okay, so it sounds like Pardot is kind of the heart of the marketing efforts for college business from a recruiting and enrollment perspective.
It is, and like Ashley mentioned, there are still other resources out there for alumni. I'm tapped into the marketing cloud that the university uses for alumni, and there are other people on campus using marketing cloud and using Pardot for like the similar things. Recruitment and enrollment seems to be the big push on campus, and that is what we're doing at the College of Business as well, using it for that.
Okay, well, that's awesome. We do have a question. Then this is more kind of broadly. I think this might be a question for, I don't know, probably mixture of Jessica, Michelle, Ashley. Changes in marketing automation needs or data models as online learning grows more and more. And I guess even Mary, because I'm sure you guys have pivoted and done quite a bit more, or have done more online, masters online, executive track courses. So I guess I'll come back to Mary just to have both in the COVID era and then pre-COVID, as things have been shifting more and more towards wanting this kind of distance learning or executive MBAs or things like that are geared towards this audience that maybe is far from a campus or even a satellite campus. Over time, has that shifted in how you're marketing?
It's interesting you ask that, because our MBA program has a long history of being online. We're kind of like one of the first people that did an MBA. And so we've been doing that a long time, but there has been reformations of that and kind of like growing it and maturing it into the future. So that hasn't changed a whole lot. We do have new online programs that we've created for our specialized masters. And I don't know that this was related to COVID in any way, but we've had to do a lot of, I'm sure as most people have, we've had to do a lot of changes in how we interact with our leads and our qualified candidates based on COVID. So everything went to Zoom, and all the live information sessions had to become virtual events. So we've done a lot more of that. And I think there's been a lot more interest in the online programs. So we may be creating more down the road. I'm not 100% sure, but there's definitely a pickup in interest on that. And there's definitely a higher enrollment for some of those, I think, during these times.
Yeah, because that makes total sense. Ashley, go.
Yeah, and I would just say I would agree. I definitely saw a shift. Our department went from being completely in person, really this hands-on experiential differentiator, to needing to be fully online for essentially a year. And it required a lot of quick adaptability. I guess in terms of Pardot specifically, we differentiated. Pardot was our true marketing, lead up to enrollment. And then once they were a student, we considered that operational emails. And then those tended to be a lot more individual. And so it didn't necessarily impact the complete usage of Pardot, but how we marketed completely. We had to quickly get our website in really good shape. We had been planning on doing a webinar series, but it turns out that was a huge success, because we essentially launched it the first week of April, which everyone was scrambling for information, what to do, just looking for resources. Nobody was Zoom fatigued yet. So lots of early on, just getting people interested in there. And I think it helped people see that although it's a very different type of education, that, you can still learn through a virtual setting. And we tried to do as much as possible with just shortening the classes. Nobody wants to sit for 4 to 8 hours. It needs to be these really short sessions, build in breaks. But it did change the way that we marketed. And like I said, just required a lot of quick adaptability, making sure our differentiator was still our differentiator in terms of marketing messaging, and what did our website feature, and how did that all tie together? What were we pushing people to when we were thinking about that? So
something that's very interesting. Something that this is just me having sent emails and having had hours-long conversations with people about when to send an email, what time is the right time to send an email, in light of kind of how people now being, well, at least now quite a bit, maybe more so previously, being home. And because previously I know that I was always like, well, should I send this email? And it's going to be lunchtime when they're there, so they might be more apt to like respond. And versus now everyone's working from home. Has that thinking like kind of crept into when you're sending an email? Like, oh, the people are not necessarily like at their desk, so they may not be so worried about getting caught reading a personal email. If they're home, their phone's always there. They'll be like, okay, whatever, cool. Has that changed how you guys do your marketing, knowing that your audiences, instead of being in an office, they're home and available?
I mean, yeah, just quickly, it totally did for me. That, like, I call it the right before work. Like, you're kind of in a work mindset, but you're not there. Like Tuesdays and Thursdays, 7 to 8 used to be like prime email send time. And then after COVID, it was like, I don't know, like middle of the day, later in the afternoon, Fridays when everyone's like sick of working, but you used to never want to send emails on Fridays. It totally changed the open rates and the engagement. It kind of was all over the place.
Yeah, Mary, I'm curious, both Mary and Michelle, if you guys have had similar experiences when you've been, Michelle, when you've been talking with your clients who've been trying to market, and also Mary, if you guys have experienced or experimented with like send time changing in light of COVID and people not being in the office.
I was going to say I've seen a lot of marketing practices starting to shift, and my experience in higher ed at UNE was for the online college. So we were marketing for online programs back in 2012, and online. The online space is super competitive, and like the concept of speed to lead, that is a thing. They want to get to you quickly, and they want to nurture you correctly, and all of that. Online programs often outsource to OPMs. So a lot of the marketing efforts for online programs are outsourced. And so I'm seeing a lot of clients, starting to say, how can we do this better? How do we reach people more quickly? How do we get, the right identifiers on the record so we know when to communicate and how frequently and all of those details. So it's been interesting because when I first started in higher ed, I think the approach that we had at UNE was very different. And now I'm starting to see with all of my more traditional clients that yes, they're starting to think in these mindsets of really needing to be super strategic and in a different way than they have been in the past.
I can speak to that timing testing. We are actually about to go through that with our alumni newsletter that we send out. Generally, it's always been at a specific time, and we've just decided to, throw it in the air and say, okay, well, let's try 6 a.m. and see what happens. So we're going to be doing that just to see, we don't know what people are doing right now. So we want to see what they're doing.
Yeah. I mean, 6 a.m., noon, 2, just to see like people are home, or, I mean, some people are going back to the office, but I'd be interested to see, especially if I was in like higher ed or sending emails to B2B people, like B2B customers or prospects, knowing that they may just be home and they may not be as worried about like feeling regimented and I can only look at emails between 12 and 1 when I'm having lunch or whatever. So I kind of want to pivot the conversation a little bit, and I want to chat with Andrew, because we haven't really heard from Andrew, and I think Andrew's kind of got an interesting both previous experience and current experience. And when we had this initial conversation, kind of a pre-meeting with some of the people on the call here, and one of the topics that came up was around within marketing, especially in education, it can sometimes feel like you're like what you're doing is kind of has a higher meaning, or has more important than just being just leads and revenues, and you're just lead XYZ. It feels like you're doing something that has more meaning. And Andrew previously, as he mentioned, was a consultant working in B2B, B2C, and he's pivoted. Now he's marketing automation manager with a company called Teachers Pay Teachers. And I was able to connect with Andrew because I have a history with Teachers Pay Teachers. I did their Pardot implementation when I was working with another company, and so I'm very familiar with their model and familiar with kind of what they do. And Teachers Pay Teachers, they are way more popular than I thought they were. I went to a family party, and one of the people there was a middle school teacher. I was like, oh, have you heard of TPT? And he's like, oh my God, all my teachers. I'm like, wow, okay, this is a big deal. And what they do is they basically, like teachers, in order to, if they are particularly good at, like, I'll just use an example of like a lesson plan around French or around English or science for grades 2 and 3 or 4 and 5 or whatever, they turn into kind of a commodity, a product, make it available for people to download. Other teachers that want to that need help with their lesson planning, or they find this particular lesson that they like, or something for their classroom, and then that teacher is then able to make some money off of that because they created it, and Teachers Pay Teachers offers kind of a marketplace for that. And Andrew, if I misstated any of that, please correct the record. That's just what I recall from my conversations with them. But when we talked with Andrew, he talked about this idea of it being kind of, it's more than just, oh, you're trying to get new leads for revenue. This is, you're helping a school district kind of provide more, I don't know, just better educational materials, whether it's a massive school in New York or a small school in Wyoming. I mean, these are, it doesn't discriminate in that way. It's whoever happens to have a membership, you're providing a platform to help these teachers give their students better experiences. And Andrew, I'm interested to know about what that mind shift change was like, going from, as a consultant in a B2B, B2C, trying to help companies just get more leads and grow the revenue, to now you are trying to help an organization like TPT reach more teachers, reach more school districts, more administrators. Because that there is a kind of a paradigm shift, kind of a thinking. Instead of it just being leads, there's more that you're doing. So I'm curious what that experience was like, how you think about what you do, and how that impacts everything, really.
Yeah. So one thing I learned from my time as a consultant, working across a variety of different industries, is that the skill set that you use to go about solving pain points, creating a healthy pipeline, and building a campaign to nurture sales readiness, are largely the same. But what changes is the context, and that context really matters. At the end of the day, most companies just want to sell their product or provide their services to as many people as possible, while keeping their CAC, or their customer acquisition costs, as low as possible. But like you said, there's definitely a paradigm shift when working with, especially with working educators in K-12. We're not often selling a large organization with deep pockets, and it's not so much a numbers game from that perspective. What we're really trying to do is help educators be as effective as possible, by providing tools and resources that work within their school's budget. So this key difference changes our approach throughout the sales process, from the types of marketing collateral and copy we would use, the types of KPIs we measure success with, and even the cyclical nature of a school year compared to that of a traditional, typical business calendar year. So the specific context is definitely key to the mindset, but the marketing automation skills are pretty universal for a lot of these initiatives. But for me specifically, what facilitated my move from working in consultancy to like going in-house marketing was purely from my standpoint. While consultancy was great, I got to like really experience a lot of different things, and that really helped build what my skill set is today. I really like to be part of the beginning and the end of a lot of project parts. So sometimes as a consultant, I would come in the middle of something and then just sort of build what I was hired to build, and then leave and not really know what happened. But working in-house, I get to really be part of that story and grow with the company itself. And then really just layering on top of that, working in the education industry really speaks to me on a personal level. And it's something that, especially in this last year or so, it's been really nice to like help that my work is striving to like help people in a certain industry, which has been great.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's it definitely, like you. I mean, from what I know of TPT and what you guys do, it's when you're able to get into a district, and when teachers find out that, oh man, the whole district now has a TPT subscription, and now they can go in and they can download all these lesson plans, and it can be a game changer. And I imagine that feels good. I'm sure you guys get really cool messages from teachers who are like, "Oh, this TPT is great." I mean, I've seen them. So it's definitely a different way of thinking. There's still leads and they're still trying to hit your numbers, but it's less emphasized in that versus a consultant trying to hit their lead number, to hit their sales number, to hit their bonus numbers and things like that. It's a different way of thinking, because you're not necessarily selling a product in the truest sense of the word. You're trying to sell it's a product that is ultimately there to necessarily to help people, to help teachers and students and things like that. So we're just about at time, and I do want to put out one of the questions that we received. So this person is they've worked as a student assistant in the past and a part-time teacher, and they're wanting to get into an education in some way, as in a marketing capacity. And what they're wanting to do is they're wanting to find opportunities for volunteering. And I know that not necessarily every organization, every university is going to be open to just having a volunteer that they don't necessarily know. But is there any? I know that the typical response to that is just look for volunteer opportunities. That can sometimes be hard if you don't know where to look. So anyone here have any ideas on avenues to pursue if you're wanting to kind of get your foot in the door a bit with education, whether it's an institution or a company or things like that?
Yeah, I think I can answer because I've been there. So after I graduate, I have a Master of International Marketing. It's not easy to find a job in Bay Area. So I volunteer as a Salesforce admin for 4 organizations. So what I did, I went to a lot of meetup. I know that things changed, but we do like a lot of virtual meetup, and there's tons of organizations. I would say go with local first, because we're understanding all the local community involved, and then involve a lot of trailblazer community, and there's a tons of opportunity. And I was so aggressive to the point I knocked the door. I have some nonprofit I really like. I'm like, do you need someone to do data entry? So don't pitch a lot of like automation, data security, government, because it's a big word. And like a lot of organizations, they have data security in every organization. So just do something like very basic, even data entries, and then run the report. So never give up. Yeah.
I mean, I've had that similar advice when I've worked with mentees who's like, they hit that wall of like, they've done the certs, they feel like they're good, but they don't but that next level of getting in the door.
Exactly.
And ultimately it's just down to your own determination. I mean, I've told people, I'm like, listen, wherever you live, look up the local nonprofits, because usually the Chamber of Commerce has a nonprofit directory. Just start sending emails. Worst thing they can say is no or not respond. I mean, at least you can say you've done some outreach. But just waiting for people to come to you is not going to happen. Exactly. You've got to kind of make your own luck in that way. And I've had 2 different mentees who had success with that. They did some outreach and they found themselves, typically it's like an unpaid opportunity, but it's something on the resume that you didn't have before. And that enables that next step. But you got to be willing to kind of put yourself out, do some outreach, and be willing to get rejected, because it's going to happen. You're not necessarily going to be able to like, I wouldn't recommend emailing Mary saying, hey, Mary, I want to work at the University of Florida College of Business. Can I do something for you for free? I don't think that's going to fly, but it might, but you don't know. You can say, hey, Mary, what do you think? I live in Gainesville. Let's do this. But again, you don't know. It's ultimately just going to be just a matter of what you're willing to do. Put yourself out there and offer to do things like data entry or the gunky, like saying you have the admin cert and you just need some hands-on experience. May not even necessarily be marketing, but you can level into marketing from there. Say, listen, I'm willing to do the gunky kind of grunt work admin stuff just to kind of get that experience, get something to put on your resume for 6 or 8 months or whatever, and then level up from there. That's my recommendation. And Jessica, I think that's great. You put in the chat, the Power of Us hub is great. For those not familiar, I'll do a little screen share real quick here on salesforce.org. For those unfamiliar, the Power of Us Hub, there's a lot of information here about Education Cloud, Nonprofit Cloud, the latest and greatest philanthropy cloud. And it's a great hub for a lot of Q&A, a lot of outreach opportunity. So I highly recommend it. There's just a lot here. The pro bono program, product documentation, webinars, etc. So if that's an area of interest, I would recommend putting a few hours on your calendar and just diving in and seeing what there is to be seen, and also just not being afraid to put yourself out there. All right, well, we're at the top of the hour. I want to thank everyone for, I thank the panelists for taking time at the end of the day, or whatever time of day it is for you. And there will be a follow-up with some more info, and I'll probably also send in the email kind of in case you want to connect with our panelists, some information about them. But thank you everybody for joining, and look for the recording of this in your email in the next couple days, and for the future ones as well, the next two. Thank you so much, and have a good rest of your day, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Ben.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.